Hi there, it's Nicole for Lawn Fawn, and my card today is a Mother's Day card using the Happy Mother's Day border die. And this is a great die that can span the entire width, a 5.5 inches long card with just this die. So I thought it would be fun to create an inlay border along the bottom edge. To start, I am going to stamp some of the images from the Mom Plus Me stamp set to go with my Happy Mother's Day border die greeting. I stamped the tree stump with the walnut Lawn Fawn ink, the grass with the jalapeno ink, and then I'm using some Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink to stamp two of the owl images. This is a great ink for Copic coloring, which is what I'm going to be using here today, as it won't bleed. I have a panel now that is 5.5 inches long by 4.25 inches tall, a standard A2 size, and I'm going to tape my Happy Mother's Day border in place so it doesn't shift and die cut that. I want to make sure it's as straight as possible. I'm going to carefully peel up my Post-it tape here and then carefully remove my border because I need to keep not only the die cut greeting, but all those little inside pieces as well. On the bottom portion, I am going to apply some Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn Distress inks. I'll start with my Twisted Citron first and just build up that color. I'm using another sheet of paper to keep my fingers out of the ink. I find that depending on what paper you use, and especially watercolor cardstock, a lot of times it takes a lot longer for the ink to dry, especially the distress ink, just due to the properties of the ink, that if you get your fingers in it, it will leave finger marks and then transfer the ink other places. So I like to just kind of use a scrap piece of paper to hold it in place while I'm applying the ink with the ink blending tools. I've blended those two colors together, and I'm going to move on to the sky where I'm applying some Tumbled Glass Distress ink first, and then I will gradually blend in some Salty Ocean Distress ink. These are probably my standard ink colors or distress ink colors that I like to use often when I am creating a sky and grass. So keeping the intensity of the color closest to where the actual greeting border is going to go. I'm going to spritz these panels now with water from a distress sprayer. I did grab my border to just see how that's going to look, and it'll show up nice. Once that has sat for about 25-30 seconds, I'm going to dab that with a dry paper towel, and it's going to leave a great distressed background. You could definitely skip that step if you wanted to. I like the look of the distressing. I think it adds some interest, especially where the embellishment on this card is fairly simple. I did not go way over the top and build a huge scene. It's going to be a really simple scene. I die cut the tree stump and the grass with the coordinating Mom Plus Me dies and kind of just laid them out there. And then I'm stamping an additional greeting that says, "I will always love you," plus that cute little heart. So this stamp set coordinates really nicely with the Happy Mother's Day border die. I'm coloring in my owls now with some Copic markers. I'm using all shades of warm gray basically with a little orange for the beak. I started really light with my owl colors. So the lower end of the warm gray spectrum with warm gray 0, 0, 1, and then 5 and 7. And I'm just gradually building up that color, adding some texture with that little dot technique that I like to use on animals and critters and things like that. It just adds a little bit of interest and fun. But I definitely started lighter, and as I worked on the image and colored it in, I realized I thought it needed to be darkened up a little bit. So I kept blending it out, working in those darker colors, the warm gray 7 and warm gray 5, and deepening that, especially along the wings and feathers and things really makes them pop and stand out, I think. I'm going to color both images very similarly, both using the same colors. I didn't go crazy with picking out a whole bunch of additional colors or anything like that. Tried to keep it pretty simple. Use that YR04 again for the feet, a little R01 for the cheeks, and then I will grab the coordinating dies and die cut the owls using those dies. On a side fold card base now, I'm going to adhere the top portion of my scene to my note card. And then I need to attach some of these little images that are actually going to be tucked behind the greeting. So my tree stump is going to go right here. I did add the I love you from the Mom Plus Me stamp set in the tree trunk. Plus I added a little E40 and E43 Copic markers to the tree trunk to give it a little color so that that inside portion of the tree is not stark white, nor was the heart before I stamped it with the walnut ink. Then I glued my greeting in place using a glue pin. Oh, I haven't glued it yet. Pardon me. I laid it in place so I knew where to kind of make sure where everything was going to go and make sure everything was tucked behind that little piece of grass in the tree stump. But now I'm applying some glue, little dots of glue to that die cut greeting. And now I am going to replace that very carefully and slowly, even though I've sped it up a little bit here. Sorry, got my head in the way. I wanted to make sure it was lined up perfectly. Even where it kind of, instead of inlay, it kind of goes over that tree trunk area. Next, I applied adhesive to the back of the green grass and replaced that part of the image. I'll tuck in the other little blades of grass on the other side of the tree trunk. I'm going to trim off the excess overhang on the right side of the card. It just barely was a little bit longer than my note card itself. Then all of these little pieces that need to be replaced inside of each of the letters, any of the little hoops or letters that need replaced, like the letter A, I'm going to pick all of these up, apply a little ink to them, whether it be green or blue ink, just depending on whether it's going to be up in the sky area or below in the grass. Just kind of dab that with my ink blending tool and then replace that in the letter. Then place little dots of glue inside of each little area and replace it with those tiny little pieces. There might be an easier or better way to do this, but this was really fairly simple. It can be a little tricky to know which little piece goes in what. If I had been thinking, I think when I originally started this, I probably could have popped them out in a line and made this a little bit more simple. However, I found it was pretty easy to determine which piece went where. Again, just dabbing them with a little bit of ink, adding the glue, and then replacing those pieces. This is a little bit tedious, but I think it's a critical step to really give it that nice finished look. I'm going to use some glue dots to attach my owls to the tree stump there, so they're sitting on top of the tree stump, and then use some glossy accents on the beaks on both of the owls. I always like to add that. I think it adds a nice little glossy touch when it's all said and done. Need just a few finishing touches now. It definitely looks great the way it is, but I thought it needed a little bit or a little pop of color up in the sky, as well as maybe a little pop of color along that grassy border. So from the Mom Plus Me stamp set, there's 3 adorable little flower shapes, and I used the sunflower, fake tan, and plastic flamingo inks to stamp these 3 flowers. And then I will die cut them with the coordinating dies. and use the hearts from the Mom Plus Me stamp set to stamp 2 hearts up in the sky, which adds a nice pop of color up there using the Lawn Fawn lobster ink. I'm going to use some mini glue dots to glue my flowers along that grassy border, which I think adds a great touch and pop of color. Really finishes off that grassy outdoor kind of scene look beautifully. 2 flowers on the left side, 1 there on the right. And then I'll take a green Copic marker and fill in the centers of those flowers just to kind of finish them off. And that is pretty much it for this great Mother's Day greeting card. Thanks for watching this video showcasing the Happy Mother's Day border die from Lawn Fawn. The supplies I've used are listed and linked below the video on YouTube. Here are a couple more cards showcasing Lawn Fawn stamps and dies that you might be interested in. Please subscribe for weekly card making and stamping videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.